Hey there, oddballs. In the paranormal news, we have ghost stories coming from the cast of the new Mutants movie. Maybe it was Ghost Rider. And we have a man who actually beat a house fire with, well, the cause and solution to all life's problems. Beer! The Cryptid Corner this month, we're talking about Pukwudgies. Don't know what a Pukwudgie is? Well, you will after this show. And our very special guest is going to be a little bit of soul food for us all and get us into some conscious thinking. If it's odd to you, friend, it's on the Oddtonewfoundland.
It's the Odd to Newfoundland. Ghostly greetings from your host, Jonathan. Mysteries, ghosts, monsters, and lore. East Coast esoterica and so much more. If it's odd to you, friend, it's on the Odd to Newfoundland.
Ghostly greetings from the oldest city in North America. I'm your host, John Mallard, bringing you the best in East Coast esoterica. You, my friend, have stumbled upon the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast. Welcome to episode 95 of your monthly paranormal variety show. Having you here is better than finding yard sale treasures along your way or seeing friends decisively achieve their goals. There's a great feeling right there. Why? Because you're wonderful, a masterpiece, beautifully made, important to people because you're important to me, highly favored by your creator, or the law of averages and physics working in tandem. You, my friend, are an oddball, and on this show, your family and we are one. My goodness, where did this month go? August just flew. Here we are now in September. I got this summertime sadness. It's true. I went camping with my little ones. I had such a great month this month. It was so much fun. But the reality of it is, summer is coming to a close. And you know, it always sparks ideas and thoughts at the end of summer. I always think about the end of the summer as being the start of the school year for my kids. And I'm so blessed to live in a place where my kids are going back. And I just hope that all the kids out there were going to be looked after by our wonderful teachers, you know, whether you're American, Canadian, Australian, don't matter. We've got some of the greatest teachers on the planet out there looking after our little ones and making sure they learn the ropes of what it's like to be a human being on planet Earth. So I'd like to dedicate this episode to all the teachers out there. And if you're a teacher listening to this show right now, thank you so very much. And do me a favor, see if you can teach all the people out there how to subscribe and like these episodes. We got some new subscribers, and I've just got to say that the Facebook page, the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast Facebook page, absolutely exploded this month. Man, oh man, hundreds of people jumped on there and dropped a like. I personally love the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast Facebook page because, well, it's where a lot of my silly pictures and weird articles get thrown up. So if you like weird stuff, if you like weird content, go ahead and give it a try. And of course, you can't have new subscribers without unlocking the horrible para-joke of the show. So let's just go ahead and give a little shout out to Eddie. I give a little shout out to Steve Deeve. A little shout out to C Burn 64. A little shout out to XHHB9X. And the last subscriber on Podbean was Yup. Y-U-P exclamation point. I'm thinking it might be Dave Hester from Storage Wars, you know. Yep! Maybe it was that guy. Thank you guys so very much for subscribing to the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast. And you have now unlocked the horrible para-joke of the month. Here it is. So I'm going to ask you guys, why don't aliens and Bigfoots like to eat clowns? Well, it's because they taste funny. Ba-doom-ts. These are getting worse. But they're supposed to get worse, man. That's the whole idea. Episode 95. Here we are. Hope you guys enjoyed episode 94. A very dear and special episode to my heart. 6 years in your ears. It was just such a fun episode, and I hope you guys had a chance to check that out. Remember, folks, if you want to shout out on this show, you got to subscribe on the Podbean app or go to the website at Oddtonewfoundland.com. Check it out there. You're going to find it for Podbean, okay? Find that, click follow, click like, whatever you're on, and you'll get a shout out on this show. I only do the Podbean subscribers because there's a lot of subscribers on other platforms, and I don't want to disappoint anybody. So there you go. Get on there, subscribe. And thank you so very, very much. Before we continue on with the show, just want to do a quick shout out to this show's sponsor, which is Accusonus. An amazing sponsor. The best sponsor I've ever had. Why? Because they take a very, very difficult hobby like mine, which is podcasting and editing podcasts, and make it so simple with a turn of a dial. And, we've talked about a couple of things they had, a couple of their apps they use, so to speak. One of my favorite things they have is Deverberator, which takes their reverberation out of a room. So basically the echo, even though I have my own podcast studio, there's still a little bit of echo, and this really helps remove it. But I want to talk about a little something else. This amazing gear for your existing audio equipment, okay? This gear does something that's even cooler, okay? So within the noise removal system is a thing called, get this, and you're going to laugh when I say this, it's called a leveler. And what this does with the turn of a knob is it takes a conversation I'm having on the phone with someone, say, and it's so hard, unless you're in like a professional studio, to make sure that voice sounds clear and is at the similar volume to my voice. Guess what? This thing does it with the turn of a knob. So please, guys, check out Accusonus if you're a fellow podcaster, or maybe you like doing music or whatever, YouTube videos. They'd be great for that. Check them out, Accusonus.com. Of course, the link will be down at the bottom of the show notes. Some news from my own house to yours as we head back to school. The workouts have been going good. I know I never mentioned the last few shows. What can I say, man? I'm getting jacked. I hope you guys are too. Be looking after yourselves in this lockdown thing, man. I can't help but think that a lot of people might just be chilling and relaxing and sitting on the couch and kind of not doing a whole lot. So please do me a favor. Turn on the Oddtonewfoundland, have a laugh, and look after yourself. Get out for a walk. Get out for a walk. Lift some weights. Go for a jog. Do something. Get out of your house. Enjoy nature, because before you know it, it'll be winter time and we'll be housebound again. My little girl just celebrated her 10th birthday, and I told her that I'd make sure that I have an extra silly story in the paranormal news this month just for her. So let's go ahead and dig into this month's paranormal news.
Somewhere between the funnies and the obituaries is, oh yes, the paranormal news.
So what's 15 feet long, smells absolutely horrible, and it washed up on the beach in UK? Well, I don't know. Neither does anybody else. The creature, which has been dubbed the Ainsdale Anomaly, was spotted on the Merseyside beach, and no one is certain what it is or what it was. Probably should say what it was. A 15-foot-long sea beast that's been compared to a washed-up mammoth has washed up on a British beach. The creature, which has been dubbed the Ainsdale Anomaly, was spotted on the Merseyside beach and has had people puzzled ever since. It's very bizarre, said one man. It's like a mishmash of different things all chimeraed into one. It's 15 feet long. It has flippers, it's furry, and seems to have another creature attached to it, possibly by an umbilical cord. So, it could have been given birth, I guess. What the heck is this thing? It was almost like a whale that had eaten a horse that had eaten a dolphin. So there you go. There's your visual. Of course, this strange animal, nobody really knows what it is. The man who asked to remain anonymous shared photos of the sea beast with the Ainsdale community on their Facebook page, and while plenty of people had suggestions, nobody could identify it for sure. One local woman who filmed the strange creature said it's been called the Ainsdale anomaly just for that very reason. My first assumption was it was a whale of some kind, and some people think it's a cow or a horse. I honestly have no idea. My favorite theory, though, is that it was a woolly mammoth or a crash-landed alien. That sounds fun to me. It almost looked like an elephant, too, in honesty. The 32-year-old who wished to remain nameless said the remains smelled so bad they almost made her ill. I didn't get too close because there was a lot of flies and it totally reeked, she said. I made the mistake of going downwind as I worked my way around it, and I nearly threw up. Putrid stink. Very badly decomposed. It looked like there was 3 big wounds of bodily areas, all slightly different and unidentifiable to all bystanders there. To me, the body looked quite twisted with flaps of skin here and there, and it was just a monstrosity to wash up on this beach. But there was no identifiable head, which was really strange. And possibly it was underneath the mound, but we did not see one firsthand. What I believe to be rib bones were sticking out at the top side of it. It looked like there was a large spine, and it seemed to me that the vertebrae were showing through the skin. She added that an official from the Natural England had been down to inspect the remain, but was completely unable to identify. Further genetic testing is taking place on this strange anomaly, and I'll keep you guys posted on this really interesting story. Stay tuned. You know, some comedians get what's coming to them. And John Oliver, well, I guess he had it coming, because now there's a city naming their sewage plant after John Oliver. A Connecticut town's officials are showing comedian John Oliver what they think about his expletive-filled rant about their city. They're naming the local sewage treatment plant after him. Danbury Mayor Mark Boughton announced the tongue-in-cheek move in a video posted on his Facebook page on Saturday that shows him at the plant. We're going to rename it the John Oliver Memorial Sewer Plant, the Republican mayor says. Why? Well, because it's full of shit, just like John. The new name comes after a recent episode of HBO's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, in which he explored the radical disparities in the jury selection process, citing problems in a few Connecticut towns. In the segment, Oliver noted Danbury's charming railway system and its historic Hearthstone Castle. I know exactly 3 things about Danbury, he said. USA Today ranked it the second best city to live in 2015. It was once the center of the American hat industry, and if you're from there, you have a standing invite to come get a trashing and thrashing from John Oliver, children included, especially you. It wasn't exactly clear what prompted Oliver to go off on Danbury. A message-seeking comment was left on for his agent. Oliver has made fun of Boughton and other American mayors in 2017 over videos they made seeking to attract Amazon's second world headquarters. In his video, Boughton asked Alexa where the best place for his facility would be, and Alexa says Danbury. In Boughton's new video, he also mentions that Amazon has decided to open a distribution facility in Danbury, although it's not the second world headquarters. And, oh, by the way, thanks for showing that Amazon video, Boughton says to Oliver at the end of the video. We did get Amazon here in Danbury, by the way. So there you go. So this comedian was making fun of this small town, basically, for trying to, rope in Amazon, because let's face it, in this day and age, in the pandemic, it's a great business to have kind of locally. And just trashed him for it. And, well, there you go. They named a sewage treatment after him because he's being a piece of shit about it. So there you go. I like that. It's kind of cool. Okay, so when I say X-Men, I'm sure a lot of things pop in your mind. If you're a child of the 80s, such as myself, you're probably thinking the iconic 1990s cartoon, The X-Men, which was on Fox Kids. But there's also a whole host of video games, a whole host of movies. You had your X-Men movies and, just so many cool things, X-Men First Class. But now there's a new movie out called New Mutants because, it all just can't be about Wolverine and Cyclops. The whole film franchise does have to have new blood. Speaking of blood, apparently some of those walls were bleeding, though, on set. Uh-oh. I'm about to read a story that is totally awesome. The New Mutants cast was totally creeped out by an abandoned mental hospital where they were filming. The X-Men series takes a terrifying turn in the New Mutants, a horror spin-off that's finally heading to the big screen. The horror thriller follows 5 teenage mutants who begin to harness their power as they look for ways to escape the mental institution where they are being held for psychiatric monitoring. It's been a long journey for the movie. Originally slated for a 2018 release, the superhero film went through multiple delays, of course, coronavirus being one of them as well. The movie was filmed at Medfield State Hospital, a mental hospital in Massachusetts that has been abandoned for almost 50 years. From creaky floors to scary ghost stories and more, the hospital has no shortage of terrors. Alice Braga, who plays Dr. Reyes, says she was totally creeped out by the mental hospital. There are all these spooky ghost stories going around, and I think a lot of women were like lobotomized there. That alone kind of just makes me just feel kind of uncomfortable. But that's not just all that happened. Some of the crew had strange experiences there and had to be walked back to their cars at night because they didn't want to walk all the way across to get back by themselves, writer and director Josh Boone said. One element that was really present for me was the smell. It's something you can't really explain to someone. It just creeps into your soul, Henry Zaga, who plays Roberto da Costa, said. Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Liana Rasputin, Rasputin, that means she's I think she's the sister of Colossus, is no stranger to the horror genre with critics such as Morgan, Split, and Glass. I've shot in 4 abandoned hospital institutions, so it's kind of a second home to me, Taylor-Joy said. Charlie Heaton is also a veteran at shooting at abandoned mental hospitals, as this was his second, but was quite freaked out at some of the stories the hospital's groundskeeper then shared with them. The cast agreed that while shooting at an abandoned mental hospital was haunting, it really added to the ambiance of the film, which is going to be a horror one, more so than shooting on a soundstage would have been, that's for sure. So guys, such a cool story right there, man. I love it when famous people come across ghosts because then it's like they're right in the public eye. Everybody, feels it. But yeah, man, like if you ever go to a place like an abandoned hospital or anything like that, you're going to feel this weird, lonely, just bizarre feeling just being there. And, sometimes I wonder, could it be some of that spiritual energy trapped there, or could there be ghosts kind of hanging out there and stuff? Yeah, it's hard to say. One thing I do know, though, is that a New Mutants movie sounds awesome. I'm pretty excited for that to come out, and I hope when it does come out, it's totally amazing. Homer Simpson quoted it best, I think. Beer, the cause and solution to all life's problems. Well, not so much the problems this time. It may have been a solution. It may have saved some lives. Extreme situations require extreme measures. A California man's quick-witted response to the LNU Lightning Complex fires has saved his house and redeemed his taste in beer. More precisely, Charles Little from Vacaville used cans of Bud Light beer to ward off the encroaching flames of a wildfire that threatened to consume his home that was still under construction. People tend to make fun of light beers, and arguably for good reason. But in this case, at least, my hat goes off to Bud Light. It is good for something, after all, he says. The fires reached Little House in Vacaville's ironically named Pleasant Valleys Road on Wednesday morning. He told the reporter that he and his family had been prepared and packed most of their things. Only Little himself refused to leave his house, telling his family to go on without him. I had a lot of friends and family trying to fight with me to get to leave, but it wasn't going to happen, and I wasn't going to do it, he said. Little's reluctance to let his house burn down is understandable. Nobody wants their house to burn down, considering that he had that exact thing happen to him only 5 years earlier. Was actually torched from a spark from a malfunctioning fan in his attic. So he was pissed off enough to hang around and fight this fire. Little and his family weren't at home at the time, so they escaped unscathed. Their house, how everything in it wasn't lucky, so the first time, nothing remained. After battling an insurance company for 5 years, Little wasn't about to let history repeat itself. He'd wrangled with lawyers and insurance agents. Facing the raging fire was walk in the park, according to him. I spent 5 years getting to this point. I'm not going to start over from ground one. So he grabbed his beer, and it was like a war zone. As the fires crept closer to his house, Little initially relied on good old-fashioned water. He set off his sprinklers and used water hoses to ward off the flames, wetting the ground and extinguishing what he could. It was actually a good plan, But then he hit a slight snag. Solano Irrigation District decided to shut off the water in the area to aid other firefighters. In the blink of an eye, the water barrier around the home slowly disappeared. In the blink of an eye, the safety of the water barrier that was around that home disappeared. I got scared, summarized Little. It was kind of like an eye-opening that I could be in trouble. In an interview with KCRA3, he said that this was when the propane tanks that everyone in the area had next to their houses started exploding in the heat. It was just like a war zone. Boom, boom, boom. The fires were just going crazy, he said. Left without running water, Little resorted to raking and shoveling dirt and using what little water he had in a small barrel. But the results were poor, and when the fire started heading towards his workshop, desperation then set in. Little employs himself as a steam fitter and welder and conducts his business out of the workshop. Losing it would have meant losing his livelihood. He looked around for water, juice, anything that was liquid and could extinguish the flames. Then he spotted it. A 30-pack of Bud Light beer. The beer case was an unlikely weapon against the fire, but it was all he had. Without hesitating, he grabbed it. It was the only thing I had, and I had a lot of. And it was wet, said Little, an apt description for Bud Light. As an additional emergency measure, Little ripped some metal sheets off the sides of his workshop to use as barricades. Armed with beer, he turned to face the flames one more time. His plan was good, but ultimately didn't work too well. When I first grabbed the cans of beer and ran down there, I was shaking them up and opening them up, and it was just like dispersing too quick, you know? Then he noticed a nail sticking out of one of the metal sheets he brought down with him. That was the secret weapon he needed. When I saw that nail, I would just puncture a hole in the beer can and shake as I was going, and I could aim it and concentrate on the bad parts. Lo and behold, this time the beer did its job. While it wasn't enough to keep the fire away completely, Little was able to slow the advance of the inferno down until a fire truck pulled into the neighborhood. With the help of the firefighters, proper equipment, in addition to his beer, Little was finally able to get the fire under control. Good enough to save his house, good enough for him. I guess from now on, Little will be drinking Bud Light. I know I would. You know, our last story tonight's probably not going to be so much of a story, but I want to talk about something that's just really, really, really interesting. You know, if you've ever been on the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast Instagram, you see that every now and then I put up strange pictures. And these are usually pictures that have no explanation, okay? But anyway, I put up a picture of one called the Time-Traveling Hipster, which was from 1941. There are a few fair stories and legends of time travelers throughout history. The most popular so far has proven to be the image from 1941 taken at the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia. The picture apparently shows a man in modern clothing and wearing sunglasses in an era when most people were sporting suits. Though there have been many arguments and explanations which counter the theory, it's still wildly popular on the internet. And, you know, just to kind of describe this picture to you, which is why I wanted to put it in here in the paranormal news, it just looks so weird, man. This guy's got a wave in his hair, sunglasses on. He got what looks like a cell phone in his hand. He got a sweater and a t-shirt, and underneath the sweater, the t-shirt, like, you can just tell it has a logo on it that's been screen printed. Like, this is freaking weird. Now, the thing is, a lot of people have looked at this picture and they can't debunk it. In other words, they can't figure it out. So what do you guys think? Do you think the Time Lords are real? Do you think this is like a real live Doctor Who guy? Maybe this guy wanted to go back and see the opening of this bridge for some strange reason. Anyway, oh man, we've had many interesting stories this month. We've had a mystery 15-foot-long sea monster washing up on a British shore. We had a city naming a sewage plant after John Oliver for being such a jerk. The New Mutants cast talking about working in a really creepy asylum while filming their horror show. We had a man who almost saved his property with beer, and a very strange picture indeed of a time-traveling hipster. Do you believe in time travel? Well, let me tell you something. All these stories have been odd to Newfoundland.
C is for your claws, so sharp to me. R is for reports we seldom see. Y Do we ignore creatures of myth and lore? B is even more puzzling monsters we adore. T is for tales passed through the years. I is for icons of all our fears. D is for discovery of strange creatures in every country. It's the Cryptid Corner on Oddtonewfoundland. Yeah, yeah.
Little ones, or little people, have been part of many folklore traditions all over the world. But Pukwudgies are magical little people of the forest in Algonquin folklore, similar to the European gnomes or fairies. Pukwudgie stories are told throughout the northeastern United States, southeastern Canada, and the Great Lakes region. However, their nature varies in the folklore of different tribes. In the Ojibwe and other Great Lakes tribes, the Pukwudgie, or Bagwaginini, is considered a mischievous but basically good-natured creature who plays tricks on people but is not dangerous. In the Abenaki and other Northeast Algonquin tribes, a Pukwudgie, or Bakwudgeman, can be dangerous, but only to people who treat him with disrespect. In the Wampanoag and other tribes of southern New England, Pukwudgies are dangerous creatures who may play harmful tricks or even help a human neighbor, but are just as likely to steal children or commit deadly acts of sabotage. According to some Wampanoag stories, Pukwudgies were enemies of the culture hero Maushop, and were even responsible for his death, or the deaths of his son. Pukwudgies are usually described as being knee-high or even smaller. Their name literally means person of the wilderness, and they are usually considered to be spirits of the forest. In some traditions, they have a sweet smell and are associated with flowers. Pukwudgies have magical powers which vary from tribe to tribe, but may include the ability to turn invisible, confuse people, or make them forget things, shapeshift into cougars or other dangerous animals, or bring harm to people by staring at them. Pukwudgies, strange, bizarre fairy folk of Indian culture, and they definitely deserve a hair on the Cryptid Corner.
Attention all Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and TuneIn radio listeners. The Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast brings you the best in East Coast esoterica on the first of every month. Together, we can keep it growing by sharing the show on social media, subscribing to the show wherever you may be listening to it from, and by leaving feedback about your favorite episodes. John certainly needs a friend like you to help make his dreams come true, minus the alien abduction dreams. That is not cool at all. The Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast. Always available, always free, always odd.
Tonight's guest is the author of 3 books, including the recently published Know Your Soul, Bring Joy to Your Life. Archangel Michael asked him and his co-author, Dynamose Chen, to write a book and provided material as well as an introductory message placed prominently in the front. The book discusses the origin, purpose, and structure of the soul and includes personal experiences of the authors interacting with the spirit realm. Both authors have experienced a reincarnation in the same body, and most audiences find information about this very stimulating. And I'm sure my guest is going to be very provocative on this subject. As you know, the soul knows, so to speak. So as we get into our our podcast and our interview, I always tell people it's so important to kind of get the backstory of how you got to where you are. So why did you move from a career in finance to a study of the soul, David?
Well, I started out in finance in the late 60s and really was focused on investments. And I enjoyed that initially, but as time went on, I was really upset by the short-sighted thinking and the selfish thinking, really, of too many investors, including those who were soliciting my business. And so I was thinking that I really needed to move on, and I got some encouragement to do that. And it wasn't an easy decision because I had identified myself as an investor or investment manager for a long time, but finally got up the courage and sold my business and was then received some guidance to write a book and didn't really know where to go with that, but turns out that after a few years I was able to put together a book that the title of which was Conscious Capitalism, and that was in 1998, before there was a lot of talk about being a conscious business person. And my book did all right in the United States, but it really made some impact on China. And I was invited to come and speak and talk about the book in China, and had some wonderful openings. I was shocked at how open they were to some of the ideas I had. And in fact, the Communist Party had me speak to one of their highest level executives, and they liked the idea, and the conscious thinking, conscious capitalism, what is now called corporate social responsibility, or ESG is the new name for it. It all means treating shareholders, all stakeholders with proper consideration and as equally as possible. And China rolled it out, and when the Communist Party gets behind something, it catches on, and so now it's pretty much a done deal in China, where most businesses are acting and working, operating with a conscious consideration of all their employees, their customers, their stockholders, the community, the environment. They all are given some considerable weight when decisions are made. So that's really a real quick description of how I came from finance to move into bringing spiritual ideas to business and bringing them to different countries. And the spiritual side I can talk to a little more as we go on, but that's at least the beginning background, if that's where you want me to stop.
That's fine. And to be honest, I think it's an interesting kind of change there in culture, basically. And I think you definitely went to the right place. Tell us what you know about the soul and how that information can be a practical assistance. Okay.
So my book came out the first book came out in 1998, and that was an eventful year for me. That was a year when I received some guidance to learn how to channel. And I was directed to a particular individual who had a school to teach this, and I decided to try that and see how it worked. And I went up to New York, which is I'm in Philadelphia, and so it took a little time and effort to get up there. But I went up there and learned a little bit about the fundamentals of channeling. And channeling, of course, is just bringing through information from higher realms. And so really, to become a good channel, you have to practice, like any other skill. It takes years and years. Actually, most people say it takes a lifetime to learn how to be a good channel. And so I started on that process. And at the same time, I was introduced to the higher self of the woman who was teaching this channeling program. And the higher self is, in my cosmology, and people use different terms for different aspects of spirit, but in my cosmology, the higher self is the intermediary between the soul and the personality. And so I started in 1998 a relationship with this higher self. And I've been having this conversations, monthly conversations, with this spiritual entity for the last 22 years. And in the process, I am given the freedom to ask any question I want. And I get answers that are very forthright. There may have been one or two times during the 22 years when the question was not answered. I can remember one instance where I asked about something and they said, well, we don't think this is something we want to, it'd be proper to tell you. And I kept pressing them and they told me, and I wish I hadn't pressed them. But they've been incredibly forthright. Most of these, all these sessions, with few exceptions, have been recorded, tape recorded. And so over the last 22 years, I've built up a relationship with this entity. Everything is energy. And so this entity that I'm calling the higher self is just energy. And along the way, I got introduced to Archangel Michael, who works with Diana. Diana Munz-Chen is the one who teaches the school and who I was directed to study with. And Archangel Michael is involved in this school, and he runs things from the spiritual end. Diana runs them from the physical end, you might say. And so I got introduced to Michael, and he became a guide for me, and he offered a program on connecting to your soul, and this was about 5 or 6 years ago, and I've been taking the course of the program with him, again, monthly for the last 5 or 6 years, and learning more about my soul and about the spirit realm and about life in general. And it's been a wonderful experience, and I've learned a lot. And that's what led me to write this book, Know Your Soul, Bring Joy to Your Life. This is something that Michael wanted to bring to Earth, to some new ideas and new concepts, as well as some that are known by some people. And so I'm now, we finished the book 4 or 5 months ago, and we're now in the process of making others aware of it, because there's very good information in there, including how to contact your soul. So that's, again, a short description. I can go into any details that you might want to follow up on, but that gives you a broad overview.
Well, David, I'll be sure as soon as the book comes out, I'll make sure I link it to all my social media out there, guys, because I know I got a bunch of avid readers who listen to my podcast. You know, talk to me a little bit more about that soul. How does it interact with the human personality, and why is that important to mine or anybody's life who might be listening to this podcast right now?
Well, your soul, the soul is the captain of your ship. That the soul brought us, the human personality, incarnated us for specific reasons and for giving us specific tasks. And so to know what those tasks are, and to know that you're connected to your soul and are part of your soul, you are a soul, and you are the part of the soul that is incarnated and is carrying out the intent of your soul. So the more you know about your soul, the more harmonious your life is, the more likely you are to know what your task is and to be able to accomplish it. And that has some significant ramifications, because to the extent that you accomplish the task that you have agreed to do before you came into body, it is possible that the soul will, once you've completed your task, the soul could then say, well, ordinarily we would call you back into spirit. You've done what you've been asked to do, and there's no reason to continue on. But sometimes the soul will say, well, we have some more work for you. So the soul will extend your life. It's called reincarnation in the same body. Some people call it reincarnation in the same life. What it means is that you, again, because we're all energy, your energy system is, the current one is dissolved and a new one is implanted, you might say. And this gives you the opportunity to extend your life for some period of time to accomplish more tasks. Now, I went through this process about 10 years ago, and it's a process that takes one to 2 years or sometimes longer. And during that time, your energy system is dissolved bit by bit, piece by piece, and a new energy system is implanted, so that when the transition is completed, you are able to do more things and accomplish more things. As I said, I did that 10 years ago, and it gave me the opportunity, whereas I had initially introduced some business ideas to China, I now had the opportunity to do more and introduce some spiritual concepts to China. When I first had that idea, I thought it was crazy, because China is not, at least the government is not open to or encouraging of spiritual/religious concepts. But I saw that the people of China were anxious to learn more, and had their spiritual their spiritual longings quashed for a long period of time. So I was involved in a spiritual program, spiritual teaching, I guess you would call it, which is profound wisdom. And I decided that this would be something, I thought that this would be something that China would resonate with. And so I began to introduce these spiritual concepts to China. Now you have to stay under the radar when you're working in China, because it's just better for everyone if some of the things you're doing are not known to the authorities. So I had that challenge, but I eventually got a number of books and articles published in China, and slowly but surely found people who were really interested in this work. And we've had a number of workshops now over in China, and we're in the process of expanding the program, because understanding yourself, which is key to the spiritual path, understanding yourself and seeing what aspects of your personality need some changes, and all of us need some changes. There's some negativity or inaccurate beliefs that we all have, and so by changing those, we do that by knowing ourselves. And knowing yourself, of course, is something that has been talked about for eons as a key to life. So as you know yourself more, including some of the stuff that you may not want to look at, because you may have some anger, fear, pride, things that need to be modified. By looking at those things and slowly but surely dissolving them and bringing in more accurate and wholesome thoughts and beliefs, you can affect everybody else. I mean, the world right now needs a lot of help in a lot of areas, but the spiritual area is really the fundamental building block that we all need to focus on first. And when we know ourselves and we begin to make changes that we need to make, it will affect those around us, and those around us then will affect more people, and we'll have an opportunity to have a real impact on the world for the better. And really, that's the purpose of life, to make a contribution, to make this world a better place. And we have to start with ourselves, each one of us, by knowing ourselves and as I said, making the changes that we see that we'll become aware of. If we don't already know, we'll eventually become aware of those parts of us that need some modification, that are more harmful than helpful. So that's again a quick description of what I was doing with China and the soul, and that's why we wrote the book, Know Your Soul, Bring Joy to Your Life. Because as you know your soul and as you align with your soul, and as you're able to surrender to your soul, that's one of the biggest lessons we all have to learn, is surrender. We all have free will, so which means we can do whatever we want, including the opposite of what our soul wants. But the soul has its tools, you might say, to help bring us back into alignment. And some of those tools are a little bit rough. There may be relationship issues, there may be disease issues, there may be any number of things that we all go through, and we wonder why we're going through them. But they're all to help us to see that while we have free will, we're not in charge. We're not in control. The soul is in control, and the sooner that we learn that and surrender to those guidance, the easier our life will be. But that's not an easy thing to do. We all struggle with giving up some level of control. And so this is part of the spiritual path. And as we do that, the world will get, right now we're in a crisis. And that crisis is coming because it's trying to wake us up. It's trying to wake us up to the fact that we've done things that are not in the best interest of anybody, whether they're social, with inequality, whether they're environmental, not taking care of the environment, whether they're financial or economic. We use too much debt, have too big a deficit. We want to have everything now. We're so focused on material things and not on spiritual things. So these spiritual and the material have gotten out of balance. We're a spiritual being, and therefore that's where our focus needs to be, not on getting the newest technology or seeing how our investments are doing and focusing on that. And that's something that I'm working on, quite honestly. So we want to bring ourselves into alignment with reality, with what our soul wants. And one of the reasons why we resist the impulses of our soul is because of fear. We're fearful of the unknown. And so the soul is trying to let us know that it can be trusted and that we can surrender to it. And that's a tough lesson. We all struggle with that. But the sooner we can do that, the easier our life can be. And quite honestly, I saw that in my 20 years in China. I really didn't know where to go, how to bring some of these ideas to China. But by surrendering and accepting guidance, I was helped every step of the way. And so it would make very clear to me that, we're not in control, but the being that is in control, our soul, and all the spirit guides that we have, will help us, and help us greatly. But we just have to learn to trust them.
To me, it was really interesting that time. You kind of talked a little time about the soul, knowing the problems and what's happening on planet Earth. What is the spirit realm doing right now to help?
Well, number one, and this will sound the opposite of what you're asking. What is happening now is a wake-up call. This crisis is meant to wake us up and to things that we're doing that are not sustainable. As I mentioned, our environment is not sustainable, but we're ignoring many of the problems. The economy is not sustainable. The inequality is not sustainable. The amount of debt that we have can't be sustained. So what's happening now in the spirit realm is saying, look, the personality needs to change some of the things that's going on. It has to change its beliefs, it has to change its way of doing things, it has to change its priorities. And so this epidemic is getting us to to really start questioning life and what's it all about and why is this happening, and to realize that we're all in this together and that we have to cooperate. And so it's not an accident. It won't last forever. And if we get the message, if we make the changes that are being asked to be made, then we won't have to go through it again. If we don't, then the way the world works, the way the cosmos works, is that you get a lesson. If you understand it and put it into practice, then that's the end of it. If you don't, then you get another lesson, a little bit harder, to wake you up a little bit more. And if you don't get that, then it comes back once again, even harder. So hopefully, people will stop and think, what's going on? Why is it going on? But this all is purposeful. It's not an accident. And it's meant to help us to take a step back, understand who we are. Because right now we think we're physical beings. We're all separate. There's not enough resources to go around. We've got to get ours first. And those are concepts that are not compatible with the way things really are. We have gone our own way, and we are creating huge problems. And so what's happening, the universe, or spirit, is helping us to see these things, bring them into the light, and helping us to hopefully make the changes we need to make.
So you think this might actually speed up the process of people connecting with their soul? Speaking of which, I'd like to know the handbook on that, or at least have some more guidance. Know your soul, bring joy to your life. Is that actually going to tell us how to connect with our soul?
It does. There's a very one section in the book that's specifically aimed at doing that. And it's a piece that came in from Archangel Michael, and he gave it to us and helped us to understand how to do that. And so anybody can do it. It takes practice, like anything that's important and that we really want requires some effort. Nothing is given to us without some effort. So the guidance, the steps are given very clearly in the book, and those who are really intent on doing it can accomplish exactly that with some practice.
We're getting kind of close to the end now, but there's one thing I'm kind of wanting to ask you. And I think this kind of ties into the idea that I always ask my guests who come on my show, what is your why? Why do you do what you do? But I think I'm kind of going to get the gist of that here when I ask you what personal anecdotes about the soul and its interaction with the human personality you'd like to share with us tonight. Because I kind of feel like your mission has kind of already been explained. You know what I mean? So you go ahead. Tell me a little tiny bit about, soul and its interaction with the human personality.
Well, the soul interacts with the human personality on a constant basis. We're just not aware of it. We constantly get inspiration. And we can accept it and follow it, or we can reject it. But this reincarnation, the same life that I just recently described to you, the soul works very closely with the human personality and changing the energy system. I had an experience where the soul was very much involved. And I don't know if you know the sport pickleball. It's a relatively new sport. It's similar to tennis. And I was, and it originally was created for those who are getting up in years and can't run around the court quite as much. And so I was playing the game. I enjoy it. And a ball was hit to me, and it was to my left and a little behind me. I had to back up to try and get the ball to hit it back on the other side of the net. And all of a sudden, as I'm moving backward, my movement backward accelerates. And I was aware that was happening, and I was trying to stop it because there was a concrete wall about 15 yards behind me.
Uh-oh.
And so I was consciously trying to stop my momentum, and I couldn't. And before I knew it, I hit the wall, and I fell to the floor, and my hand was broken, and my head was bleeding. And to make a long story short, after I was rushed to the hospital and they took X-rays and the whole gamut, I was bewildered because I was aware of the fact that I was trying to do something but was not able to do it, and the consequences were not pleasant, and so I didn't understand the whole thing. And I had a session with my higher self a day or two later, and I asked, what's going on? Actually, before I really asked, the higher self started to explain the situation to me. And it was a collaboration between my soul and my body. And that's not a concept that a lot of people are familiar with. I wasn't either, to be honest with you.
Yeah, usually they're kept separate in instances, but continue.
Yeah, okay. So what was explained to me was that the soul wanted to teach me some lessons, which it's trying to do all the time. And in this particular case, by breaking my left hand, which is symbolic of receiving, the right hand is symbolic of giving, it was helping me to balance those two aspects of life, giving and receiving, because I'm stronger at giving than I am at receiving. It also was a lesson to help me to surrender, to accept. I wasn't happy that this happened, but the lesson that I was being taught was just accept it. There's lessons here to learn, and this is an important lesson for you. And being the receiving end was I'd have to start receiving help in driving, help in getting dressed, help in relearning how to use my broken left wrist. All those things I needed help with and have to be receptive to. So that would help me to help balance the two aspects of giving and receiving. So there were a number of lessons here that my soul wanted me to learn and use this format, you might say, to teach it. And I was blessed that I learned that this was happening for a reason, because a lot of people have accidents and they think, well, it was purely happenstance and I'm not going to pay any attention to it. I'll go on with my life. But then because I was told that this was happening and this were the lessons, it made me stop and really pay attention. And so that's an example of how the soul interacts with us all the time. Things that we think are accidents or just happen accidentally are not. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a lesson. And to the extent we can stop and say, all right, what is the lesson I need to learn here? We can make our life a lot easier. And that's really the whole purpose of getting to know your soul. Because when you know your soul, you know that you're safe, you know that you're loved, and that you know that you're eternal. And I don't think there's much more that can be, there's not much that can be more joyful than knowing those three aspects: love, joy, and safety. And that makes our life a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. So that's one of the things I think that most people will get out of the book. They'll be able to see and understand that the soul has our interest at heart. Sometimes it teaches us with some painful lessons, but if we pay attention to them, surrender to them, our life can really flourish.
Well, I'll tell you what will bring real joy to my soul, letting all my listeners out there know when this book drops. Guys, please check out www.consciousthinking.com, www.dianamoinschin.com. Speaking Tree is another great place to check out. Tell me a little tiny bit about Speaking Tree, David. I know that you've been doing blogs there for quite some time.
Speaking Tree is, as you mentioned, the largest spiritual website. Is put out by the Times of India. They manage it, operate it. In 2012, I was invited to speak in India, and as a result of that trip and the speaking I did, I was asked to write for the Times of India's Speaking Tree blog, and so I've been putting up periodic posts about different things. I talk about spiritual things. I talk about very practical things. And one thing listeners should know, if something is spiritual, it's practical. If it's not practical, then it's not spiritual. The two go hand in hand. So I try and make everything as practical as possible. And I do that I've written probably close to 100 posts over the last 7 or 8 years. Generally, they get some very good reactions and receptivity. And so it's something that I think people would enjoy.
So, guys, in closing, don't forget to check out www.consciousthinking.com. That's www.consciousthinking.com. It'll be good for the soul. Thank you, David, so much for taking the time to be on the show tonight. And you have yourself a great day.
Thank you.
Well, the time to say goodbye is upon us, but don't worry, you can keep track of the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast very easily. It's available on Stitcher, iTunes, Podbean, and TuneIn Radio. Just look for the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast banner. Of course, if you'd like to keep up to date, you can always check out the Oddtonewfoundland Paranormal Podcast Facebook page, drop a like, and every single time a new show goes up, you'll be notified. You can also follow me, John Mallard, on Twitter, at ODDTONFLD. That's Odd to Newfoundland. Get your latest news on the podcast as well as the ever-popular Parajoke of the Day. From the oldest city in North America, I bid you adieu from the Odd to Newfoundland Paranormal Podcast.